Atlantis. Who doesn't like Atlantis? Well, maybe historians. But anyway, Disney certainly does. And not only did they make an animated movie that people love and want to be remade into live action, they intended a TV series that was scrapped and made into a direct-to-video movie. But the Duck universe sorts of loves Atlantis, I think, even a bit more. I know of at least 4 different takes on the sunken city, and honestly, I think it's another Karl Marx win, but it's a different win than, say, the Terra Firmians. The Terra Firmians have the advantage of, as far as I can tell, being an inherently unique Karl Marx creation. So he was pretty much able to create, an entirely new species, new race, totally his own. With Atlantis, like many writers before him, he has a certain canvas to play with. Who were the Atlanteans? Did they survive? Why did we sink? Is Aquaman the only true story? Is the Orichalco saga of Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually valid? No, that last one, no. I'll die on that hill. So let's sort of go into it. So let's start with the earliest exposure, or at least my earliest exposure to DuckTales and Atlantis, and that would be Little Golden Book's Ducktales, The Secret City Under the Sea. Now that story is kind of low tier, honestly. Scrooge finds out that a strange coin was found on the beach in Duckburg, and that may have ties to the city of Atlantis. So Scrooge, the boys, and Gyro, because someone has to make this up, go looking for it, and they find Atlantis. And hopefully what Scrooge believes will be the treasure of Atlantis. Because why not? Atlantis, it turns out, is full of, just actual ducks that live underwater, whose scientists found a way to make artificial air using gold, which they need to keep mining to, live.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Okay. They find out that the current king, King Gladone, is actually a false king who took power and is pushing the citizens to mine gold just to make crowns and scepters for him, which is kind of stupid, really, really stupid, because the gold doesn't have any value outside of its necessity, as a rule. So gold is valuable not just because it's shiny, but because it's rare and it can be traded for goods. It has a value and a purpose. It can also be used as a status symbol to denote, wealth, power, rank, But the logic of the story itself, gold can't be currency or a status symbol. It's fuel at best. This would be like saying, pump more oil so I can put it in my hair. It's stupid. Anyway, Scrooge and company help restore King Law, the actual king, to take down King Gladone, and Scrooge sadly can't take any of the treasure of Atlantis because as much as he wants it, as much as he really, really wants it, Atlantis...
I need it!
So as a little kid, I think the story is fine. Just the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. Not even the gold into air stuff, which that isn't bad. The problem is just sort of King Gladone's logic, which is just terrible. Next is the original DuckTales cartoon. So the Atlantis story is actually part 3 of a 4-part story known as Catch as Cash Can, where Scrooge and Glumgold are trying to prove which of them is richest by actually weighing their money, and through a series of events, Scrooge's entire fortune ends up in the Marinara Trench. So in the episode Aqueduct, Scrooge, Gyro, Launchpad, and Doofus, for some reason, go to get it back, and they find, fish people. The fish people don't like the people that live on the surface because they keep throwing their trash in the ocean, so they sentence the air breathers, I think it's supposed to be a slur, to work separating the trash. The useless metal, aka Scrooge's money, and presumably all gold currency, probably silver as well, is all dumped in an old city that Gyro theorizes is the lost city of Atlantis. Now, Scrooge and co. eventually escape via Gyro's fizzy drink to lift Atlantis up, but let's focus on 2 things. One is the trash aspect. It's a good message, anti-pollution is a good message to send to kids, as well as showing the negative aspects. The king himself admits that, what gets thrown down, they try to use some of it, but some of it is harmful, makes it hard for them to breathe. And there's so much of it falling down that citizens spend just about every day cleaning up the mess. It's good to hammer this lesson home, even with, the fictional idea of, sea people. The other thing is the episode never quite admits that the sea people themselves are Atlanteans, which I think is kind of interesting. Usually when you hear about the story of Atlantis, it's sort of implied, here are the surviving people of Atlantis. Well, how'd they survive? In some stories, it's foretold. There's a vision, Atlantis will sink, so okay, we can prepare for it, but could we just leave? Usually Atlantis sinks pretty quickly, so there's no chance for anyone to, do anything about it. But it's also nice they sort of play it fast loose. Are the sea people Atlanteans, and the episode just doesn't tell us, or is it just we didn't want to tell people, hey, the Atlanteans are dead. The sea people have already been here. It's sort of interesting. But in the same way, Atlantis doesn't quite matter in the grand scheme of things. Granted, the treasure of Atlantis will play a bigger role in the next episode, which is really great. It's a really great episode. Like, Catch as Catch Can's a really great story. If you haven't already, you need to watch it. So next we have the original story, Secret of Atlantis, written by the man himself, Karl Barks. Now, fun fact, this story is the first time the nephews used the Junior Woodchuck guidebook, known here as Junior Woodchuck's Book of Knowledge, which I think is pretty accurate. Now, the premise of the story is kind of hilarious, and almost kind of shady if you think about it. So, Scrooge is able to acquire every 1916 quarter, and he dumps all but one of them into the ocean, thereby making that one coin's value go up to, hang on, let me check my notes here, $10 skrillion. $10 skrillion. That coin then gets run over by a steamroller before he can sell it, so he, Donald, and the boys go down to the ocean to find another one, and there he meets the Atlanteans. And they're all kept in Atlantis to avoid them telling anyone about them, and they're able to escape later with the promise to never tell anyone about Atlantis. What makes the story interesting is the history itself. So Atlantis here is a continent millions of years ago and gradually sank after an earthquake, and the Atlanteans, they moved higher up. They built their cities on the mountains, and they kept building the buildings higher and higher as the sea level rose, before it eventually just sank. But fortunately, this happened over thousands of years, and the Atlantean people effectively adapted and evolved to survive underwater. They have gills, they're green, they got webbed hands and feet. Yeah. Barks delves into the history of Atlantis and creates a place wholly unique to itself. They have a history, a culture, a language, the first language, and even an arcade. Awesome. Finally, we have the reboot's attempt at Atlantis, and I honestly think there are two takes on Atlantis here. Effectively, the reboot of the pilot episode Woohoo, which was Escape 2 from Atlantis, where Scrooge takes the kids to Atlantis, and you have a lot going on here, which sort of takes precedence over Atlantis itself. We have Scrooge and Dewey butting heads, also Dewey working my nerves for the first time. Louie helps Webby lie to Beakley. Donald himself works on his new job helping Glomgold, totally forgetting that Glomgold is Scrooge's mortal enemy. Although, as Donald points out rightfully,
Ah, Scroogey, I see you know my newest employee.
Your new job is with my sworn enemy?
I can't keep track of all your sworn enemies.
honestly, Atlantis isn't that interesting here. It really comes up as more of a location as backdrop of the character interactions. Dewey learning patience, Scrooge learning to, give more space, Webby and Beakley clear the air, and the story has to tease, of course, this.
Old man, I will tell about us for next adventure. This is the spill of Celine all over again.
I was not responsible for the Spear of Celine.
The most interesting thing about Atlantis itself is that the crystal is a power source that lends itself to the idea of Atlantis having a natural power source. This was mentioned a lot in Atlantis Lost Empire. So yeah, there we have it, 4 different versions of Atlantis. I honestly think that the original Ducktales cartoon has a slightly better view of Atlantis, just because of the pollution aspect and the idea of sort of playing it fast and loose, with the idea whether or not the Atlanteans are the fish people or do they all just die out. At a close second, super close second, possibly even just the better version of the first place, is Secret of Atlantis, because again, there's all that lore going into, all the work put into the world building. The reboot version isn't bad. Again, the reboot always puts more emphasis on character over location. I really wish they would find a middle ground for that, but the Harper Bravana really does sort of put emphasis on the culture of the people as sort of a tragic history, which I do like. And finally, the secret city under the sea is at the bottom because, well, it's really the definition of a child's story. It doesn't really think itself through. So yeah, with that in mind, we'll bring this video to a close. If you're new to the thank you for like, comment, share, subscribe. What's your favorite version? The Secret City Under the Sea, the Aqueduct, Secret of Atlantis, the pilot, or is it just Atlantis Lost Empire? Because I know it's not Season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! I know you're all better than that. And I'll catch you all later. This is the Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching, and as always, may your fandom serve you well.